Hello, I'd like to talk about my process for writing the next game, and certainly Neverending Nightmares was a very interesting project, especially from the narrative standpoint, because it wasn't narrative focused, it was emotion focused, and also trying to recreate the feeling of a nightmare. And I think that made it hard, and certainly when writing specifically the dialogue, went back and forth of how awkward can I make it without it seeming terrible, and I think I did a developer diary about that. But the thing was that we didn't put too much thought into the endings and the story and the narrative and trying to tell a story, because that was not the goal for the project. But starting a new project, I think there's definitely value in having a strong narrative, and it's definitely something I'm interested in. So for the next project, our current thought is that there'll be no branches. We'll just focus on one story and telling it well. And certainly, maybe it won't come to any surprise, but we're also thinking about telling the story through nightmares, such that the person is in some situation and they're having a nightmare, and that's where all the psychological information about what that character is going through is revealed. And to some extent, I think that's sort of like what happens in Silent Hill 2, which again is sort of the holy grail of horror game design, at least to me. But I mean, because you don't really know anything about James, other than, he's looking for his wife in Silent Hill. And that's sort of where it starts, and then by the ending you have a better understanding of his relationship to his wife and how he feels. And so I think we can do something more like Silent Hill, and even if it's told through nightmares, which again a lot of the stuff is symbolic and in Silent Hill 2, but I think the most important thing is to have that narrative plan and to think about how you can tell things. And so we had an emotional plan for Neverending Nightmares, and we thought about how to express those emotions, but we didn't have a narrative that we were exactly building towards. We were sort of building towards 3 narratives, but they were very open-ended. So this has definitely been an interesting project, and certainly I really like narrative-focused games, and even though that's not the direction we went with Neverending Nightmares, I'm definitely happy to work on a game like that. So, but it presents interesting challenges, and because again, I think writing a good narrative is hard. Coming up with interesting characters and things like that is difficult, and I think there's a lot of elements that go into good writing, and certainly I can't say that I'm the best writer and the dialogue is going to be amazing or things like that, but at least for me, I like to try and show and not tell, and there probably won't be a ton of dialogue in the next game. So it's been interesting to create a story, a narrative, a situation that we can express through elements of nightmares. And a lot of it is probably going to be sort of breadcrumbs, finding an object, and that will have some significance will reveal something about the character. And so that's sort of where we're at, but taking a step back, at least for me and my writing process, I had ideas of the setting, and certainly I'm really proud of our setting. Obviously, I don't know if that's something I can be really proud of, because it's not like I invented the setting, but I think we're doing a unique setting that will work really well for a horror game, and I think it'll be really interesting. So then we started with that, and then we thought about what fits in with that setting and the things we want to incorporate, and So then some decisions were sort of made for us by the nature of the setting and the things we wanted to explore. But then I think, at least for me, I focused in on the characters. And, well, I had some story treatments. I started by trying to write the ending. So, here's something interesting, where the character will be when they end up. And honestly, they weren't that great. But I also had a section for the characters, and so as I was writing, I started filling out things about the characters and the relationships between them, and it was crazy because the story took shape. Well, like basically the story of the game ended up being in where I was writing about the characters instead of where I was trying to write about the story. That's just sort of where the story appeared. And I think that's an interesting approach, and certainly I think, well, I mean, obviously you don't know that everyone's going to like the story, but I think at least for me, I think it was very helpful to think about it as a character-focused journey, and or especially because we're not really, when you tell something through nightmares and in psychological horror, you're not often telling the excitement, the climax is not really driven from a conflict necessarily. I mean, obviously there's conflicts between the horrible monsters and the characters, but the conflict is and the climax is really more about revealing more about the character, and so with Neverending Nightmares we tried to do this almost through misdirection and sort of built it up, which like I recently became addicted to like Broadchurch and or Grace Point, the American one. I watched them both, but anyway. The whole thing about Grace Point or Broadchurch is that I don't know about Grace Point because it's not done yet. But with Broadchurch, basically, they present you with all these characters, and then they sort of say, hey, maybe it's this person, and then they take them away, and maybe it's this person, and so it's structured through a series of misdirects, and that's sort of the approach we tried with Neverending Nightmares is create these misdirects in the narrative. I'm not sure that's what we're going to do, and for the next game. I think in terms of climax, the tension, the rising tension, will be enough, and I think we'll just reveal more and more about the character, almost in a linear fashion, and maybe there won't be any huge twists, but I think that might be all right, and it might actually create a clearer, cleaner narrative. And certainly, like in Gone Home, right, I don't think there was any huge twists in the narrative for Gone Home. Maybe. I mean, I don't know if anyone was super surprised. I didn't feel like I was surprised by it, but I don't think that was a detriment to the narrative. So I think if we focus on telling a story like that, where we just slowly reveal more and more, then it should be interesting. And I don't think we're going to reveal it through audio clues. I think it's going to be a bit more cryptic, with little things, and you have to sort of piece it together. But I think, at least for me, the thing was creating a character, and then once I had an idea of the character in mind, it was much easier to write and figure out what to put in the game, because then it's like, oh, this character wouldn't do this, or this character would do this. And I think defining really strong characters is a really great idea when you're trying to write something. Even if that thing doesn't appear in the game, it will give you a better understanding of the character, and then you can write for them better. And certainly I think I probably stole that idea from Tim Schafer, who I think was saying for Psychonauts he created fake Facebook pages for all of his characters, so he knew, who liked whom, and the you know, their favorite foods and things like that, and basically just got a better understanding of the character. And at least for me, while this game might not be quite as personal as Neverending Nightmares, I do feel like, you know, I'm pouring myself into the character and my neuroses and my worries, and so, at least for me, writing characters that are sort of like myself in some ways, and I think there will be less similarities on the surface. You know, some people say that Thomas looks like me. I don't think anyone will think that for the next game, but I think fundamentally at our core, you know, people are very similar. It's just a question of motivations, and the journey, you know, that they've been on defines them. So I think, you know, once I understand the journey that my character's been on, I can imagine myself in that situation, and then it's obvious, at least to me, what the character will do, and then it's much easier to write for them. So that's where I'm at now, and that's my approach. So thanks for watching.